Hello, my name is Michelle, and you're listening to Profit is a Choice. On the podcast today, I have my husband, Joel. I am pretty excited and just a little bit scared about the conversation that we're going to have, but I think it's going to be fun. Many of you, my listeners, have asked what my husband thinks about this or what it's like to hear from your spouse. And so I'm going to ask him some questions, and feel free to pull some of these questions out and make them your own, and perhaps ask your spouse some of these questions. It'll, I'm sure, be an engaging conversation. Just a little bit about my husband and I. We have been married for 29 years, and we have been together for, maybe 35 and a half. We are high school sweethearts. We both went to the University of South Carolina. We have the same degrees and lived in side-by-side dorms. And then we moved to Atlanta together, where I started my career with Dun & Bradstreet, and he started with IBM. And we have raised two sons. They are 22 and 24. And we've had multiple little dogs together. Mm-hmm. And we are now in our second home together. And so that's just, a broad sweep of what we've done. But I'm going to ask him the questions that some of you sent in. And I hope you find this an entertaining and enlightening podcast. Every day, empowered entrepreneurs are taking ownership of their company financial health and enjoying the rewards of reduced stress and more creativity. With my background as a financial software developer, owner of multiple businesses in the interior design industry, educator, and speaker, I coach women in the interior design industry to increase their profits, regain ownership of their bottom line, and to have fun again in their business. Welcome to Profit is a Choice. Hey, Joel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Are you nervous?
I think you should be more nervous than me. But
you think so?
The only nervousness I have is I don't think my voice comes across very well recorded. So you might have to do a lot of editing on this. So.
That's all right. I can do that. It's kind of weird to interview you. I interview so many people, but it's kind of, I don't think I've ever asked you some of these questions. So it should be interesting.
It'll be interesting, I'm sure.
Well, just so you know, in all fairness, before we start, I didn't come up with these questions, okay? There are one or two that I might have thrown in, but I'm going to tell you, I reached out on some of the Facebook groups and said, hey, I'm going to interview Joel. What do you want to know? And these are their questions.
So I suspect after meeting some of your clients at different things, I suspect I know some of the people who may have asked questions, so I'm intrigued now.
You may very well know some of the ones that send in questions. Okay, so as I stated in the intro, we've been together for a very long time, almost 30 since 1984. So 35 and a half years at this point. We've raised kids, we've grown up together. So I feel like if there's anybody who really knows me outside of my mom, my dad, and my sister, it would be you. And we both, I think, and you correct me if you had a different idea, but I know when we both were growing up and we were talking about our lives and getting married and going to college, we both thought that we would be longtime corporate people.
Yeah, I am still a long-time corporate. I'm in software, have been for
30
just
years.
past 30 years now, in varying roles from front line support, where I would answer the phone and say, may I help you, to executive level positions where I am now. So no, I don't. I think we both thought that we would both have long-term careers in corporate America. Mine continues. Yours has changed
multiple times,
considerably.
Yeah, right.
So, but I think so far, at least one side of us is staying true to what we thought it would be. And I think based upon the shift that you made several years ago, it's been more than exciting to see it grow the way you've grown, to hear a lot of the testimonies that came back from your clients, and just to hear your excitement either before or after you talk to some of your clients and the things that are going on with them. So it's really exciting to, even though you made a shift out of corporate America, which I don't doubt that you would have been highly successful in that. I think you are more satisfied and more fulfilled in what you're doing now.
I think you're right. I was pretty satisfied and fulfilled the first, I would say, eight years.
8 years?
Yeah. And then the last two,
Not so
I
much?
think were struck. Well, because I had the boys and I was trying to work full time and drive, 30, 40 minutes, drop them off at daycare, then get down to work, try to look all corporate with spit up on my shoulder, and then turn around, pick them back up, come home. We were rushed to feed them dinner, rushed to give them baths, put them back to bed, and then get up and do it again the next day. And it was like we were just on this wheel.
We were on a hamster wheel.
It was.
It's like you said, we would drop the boys off at daycare in their pajamas. And a lot of times you would pick them up in their pajamas, headed back home after work. Your commute at the time, I think, was probably 30 or 45 minutes, and mine was clearly, I don't know, an hour and 15 minutes each way. So it made sense for you to pick them up because you generally got across town before I could.
Right.
So.
But even though the money was great during that time, the stress on the family was a heck of a lot. It was a lot. So I remember when I came home from corporate, we had just bought a brand new home. We had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And at first we thought I was going to go back. And then I said to you, I really feel like God's leading me to stay home. And, I know that deep in your heart, you thought that was the right thing, but we definitely pushed back. We both pushed back on it a little bit because that was a huge amount of money coming out for the ability to stay home.
So yeah, we were both in the 6-figure incomes then. And we bought this house needing both incomes, both 6-figure incomes. And about 3 weeks?
3 weeks after we bought the
house, moved in, settled in, you went to work, and then you called me and said, I'm on the way home. I've been laid off. So the immediate. Oh,
you didn't make this point. When I called and said, I'm on my way home, you were sitting at home.
Oh, yeah, I was.
Because you were between jobs.
Because I was between jobs.
You waited till after we bought the house and left your company and moved to another. We were both home.
That's a different story.
Remember that?
So you came home and you got a bit of a severance package. We almost immediately spent the severance package on dining room furniture and bedroom furniture because we had a brand new house, a big house to fill it with furniture. So we thought, how best to spend your severance package than to go out and fill up the house with furniture. So I think we agreed then that why don't you stay home for the remainder of that year?
And then we would reevaluate.
And then we reevaluate in December, January. And you started looking for different things then.
I interviewed.
Yeah.
And I just remember there was no way they wanted to interview me because I felt sick to my stomach going to the interviews.
And many of the jobs that I think you interviewed for required you to travel 2 to 3 days a week. And that just was not going to work with 2 boys under the age of 3. And me going back and forth across Atlanta. And if anyone knows Atlanta, you know how traffic in Atlanta can be. So it just wasn't going to work for our household. Not when you were the primary caregiver of the kids. And
right.
I'll easily admit to that.
So we worked it out. I came home, and for the first year I worked at the kids' preschool. I had them in like Mother's Morning Out at our church. And I did remember the computer system for them so that we could keep track of all the kids. And I was making window treatments like a crazy person for our house, decorating this brand new house that we moved into. And the neighbors came over and rang the doorbell. Do you remember that? In 2000 and said, hey, will you go make these things for us like you've made for your home? And so the business kicks off. And I want to say that was, well, I know when it was January of 2000. And then we moved forward and I called you in, I want to say it was like March of 2003. Crying because I had done I always loved doing their taxes. And I had done the taxes. That was after I'd started the interiors. Really enjoyed it. I had taken classes. I think I've mentioned on the podcast, I'd wanted to go back to school and be an interior designer. And at the time they were making $20,000 to my 6 figures. And I wasn't willing to do that and take on the debt of school when I already had a degree. So I just kind of thought it was a dream I couldn't chase back then. You didn't hear as much about people doing things without the degrees, right?
No, you didn't, not then.
And you didn't hear as much about the entrepreneurial journey back then. That's not what we were taught in school. We were taught big business, corporate business.
Yeah, even though after my first job at IBM, I went to work for a small entrepreneurial company. You were right. We both grew up in households where the income came from big company or it came from the public school system. So we had never, even though my mother and father owned a little small business as a side thing that my grandfather ran, it was never one of those as the sole income kind of thing. It was always a secondary kind of thing. So we never really considered starting our own businesses or anything like that at the time.
No, not really. And so I'd started mine and kind of started it because, yes, I'd thought about it, but not with intentionality. I didn't have a business plan. I always make the joke that I was sewing in our bedroom. And one day you told me that we were sleeping in my sewing room and it had to go.
We were sleeping in the workroom.
Yeah. You're like, "Show, something's got to go." And I had window treatments and fabrics on the floor, draped everywhere.
So some of your clients may have drapes hanging in their house that we had to move off of our bed so we could sleep in the bed.
might be. So anyway, so I'm doing my taxes, our family taxes. And I remember calling you. I was sitting at the kitchen table and I remember calling you in the middle of the morning. It was like a 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning call. I don't know if you even remember it, but it was, do you? And so I was crying and I said to you, I am negative. I don't even remember how much. I want to say it was like $1,500, like a negative 1,500 on my P&L when I did it. And I was in tears. And I just said, Joe, I said, oh my gosh, I'm losing money. I've been working all this time and I was missing some of the T-ball practices and doing some of those things because I was having to sew while you had the kids because they were still so little, and with the pens and all the sharp objects. And I remember I thought I should have known better. Look, and I got to tell everybody, I've said this on the podcast. You don't even listen to all my podcasts, but I've told them that you love and adore me. You care about me.
Do.
You do. And I care that way about you. And so you have been nothing but 100% supportive in this journey for me. But I remember saying to you, I'm losing money. This isn't going the way I wanted it to go. And you're like, Michele, you're a smart girl. What are you doing? Cut it out. You're giving it away for free. Stop doing that. Get your business practice. Get yourself together, girl. It's kind of what you said. And I remember getting huffy with you and it was like, fine. And then I hung up and I just remember thinking that honestly was one of the biggest gifts you could ever give me.
So I think it was more of you called and you were going through the taxes and you were probably working easily 40, 50, maybe 60 hours a week on the weekends to catch up with client deadlines because you were taking care of the kids during the day. And then when I would get home in the evening, you would sew. And if I traveled at all, then you had to wait until I got back from my business trip or whatever.
Or sew at night.
Or sew at
late.
night.
Yeah.
So, I think my comment was, are you doing this for fun or are you trying to make money out of this? Because if you're going to do it for fun, then have fun because you weren't having a lot of fun. You were enjoying it, but it wasn't like, it wasn't like going out and kicking the ball around and having fun. It was more of okay, this is something I enjoy doing, but more as a hobby. And I think my comment was, are you going to pursue your hobby as a business, or are you going to turn this into a business? And at the time, you probably weren't charging what you should have been charging. And so for all of you on the podcast, if your rates ever go up, it's my fault. Because I'm the person who pushes her to charge more. But I think I don't think you really saw the value of what you brought to the table at the time. When everyone around you could see it, they asked you to, or they hired you to make their interior soft furnishings and everything. So they did all those things. See, I picked up some of the industry terms.
You did. I'm impressed.
So you were doing all those things, and you were doing it anytime someone would call. You had a list of clients, repeat clients that were coming back over and over. Clients that were buying secondary homes and at the lake and in the mountains. And one of your comments was, I'm making window treatments for my clients' second and third homes, and I'm having trouble making my P&L work out.
Right. I was like, I couldn't even buy some of the shoes for our kids that they needed, but I was working on their second and third home. I know that what you said to me was out of love, and it was It was shocker though, right? And so sometimes I'll say to you now, okay, I need you to be my girlfriend and not my husband, which means I need you to calm me down and just say it's going to be okay. Because as a husband, let's be honest, sometimes you guys like to fix things.
Well, for anyone who knows me, I'm a brutally honest person. I tell the people at work, if you want my opinion of something, be prepared for my response, because I don't generally sugarcoat things. So when you ask me a question about what I should do, I don't generally sugarcoat things. I generally try to say them in such a way that are as positive as they can be, but they are also very direct. I just don't hold anything back when people ask me questions. So when you ask me, what should I do? I think I was pretty direct with what you should do.
You were kind though. It wasn't that you were unkind.
No.
And honestly, I knew the answer.
I just think you needed someone to support the answer.
I think that's right. And, that's what a lot of people ask me is, can I charge more? And I'll say, you know the answer. But if you need me to support you with a yes, then you have my yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really what you did. So after that day, one of the things I remember thinking was I was embarrassed to even call and tell you that I was losing money in the company, because in my mind, I had gone from bringing in six figures to losing.
But at the time, I knew you were losing money.
I know, but I don't know that I did. Well, well, let's be honest. I was bringing money in. This wasn't an inability to bring money in.
You weren't doing free work.
No, I was bringing money in. But by the time I'd paid the expenses and paid for all the things that I had to pay, like with the kids or with everything else that was business related, there was really nothing left. And I remember that day sitting down and you said to me, Michele, you have a business degree and you graduated at the top of your class, high school and college. You've done this in business. Like, you need to apply the same principles. And I sat down that day and I wrote down the difference between what was a hobby and what was a business. I wrote out, I don't know if you remember this, my mission statement, my vision statement. I wrote everything just like we had done in corporate. And I thought, I'm taking big company principles and I'm dialing them back down. And that was when the shift started happening.
Yeah. And I think the shift actually probably kicked in a little more full force because of that same year. Now, think back, we both had six-figure incomes to get into this house. 3 weeks after we got in the house, you lost your six-figure income job while I was between a job waiting to start another one. And in June or July of 99, when all this took place, I lost my six-figure job. So we went from having two six-figure jobs, a brand new house, two boys under the age of 3, and zero income that we could rely on.
Well, that was right before I started mine, because in January is when you got your job, and it's when I started mine. Because the whole thought, but you're right, the whole thought was, I'm going to do interiors so that it's enough to cover the mortgage if anything happens. Because yours was around the whole .com thing and all the nervousness with the .com with software. And the minute we realized the world didn't collapse, you got hired right at the beginning of that January.
Right.
But I remember thinking, I need to make enough just to cover the mortgage. And that's what was so bad in 2003 was I thought, I'm losing the mortgage. Like, not enough to cover the mortgage. I'm losing the mortgage.
Right.
And so started shifting and turning things around. I had great designers that I worked with, lots of homeowners. I mean, I was busy all the time, like you said. Then my business started taking off and I worked more and more while the kids were at school, and, they got in school. So my days got longer. So one of the questions that was asked, and let's see if I can find the one I wanted to ask you next, is, and I guess this could even apply to now, because let's create a quick roadmap. So I started the business in 2000. It was when the kids were sleeping at night. So it was around, because I was still mom during the day. We brought them out home from daycare.
Yep.
I worked a lot, but it was all around everybody else's schedules. And then as they got in school, I worked more. In 2009, I bought into the management company at Custom Home Furnishings Academy. That required me to travel a lot, at least a week a month. I was on the road, if not more. I was traveling around the country, teaching the Pricing Without Emotion course and putting on webinars and giving speeches. I was in the board of directors for WCAA, still running my workroom part-time at home and still mothering when I was here and around. But I was extremely I was as busy, if not busier, than any corporate job would have ever made me.
Yeah.
Agreed?
Yep.
So one of the questions was, did you ever, or do you ever feel resentful of the time I spend in my business, either thinking about it, invested in it? Because being an entrepreneur is so much more time consuming in some ways than going to a corporate job, because you can come home, and not that we don't talk about your day, we do, but you can just turn it off. Where mine, I'm still in the house, I'm still around it. It was either the workroom in the basement, my office upstairs. Do you ever feel resentful?
So I think if there was I don't know that there was resentfulness, because a couple of the companies I worked for, we started the divisions of those companies out of the house. And so it was very entrepreneurial at the time. So I understood that, you started your day when you walked downstairs to get your first cup of coffee, and you generally ended your day when you walked upstairs to go back to bed. And your day was filled from your days were bookend by those two moments. So I don't think I was ever resentful of it. If there was I think there was resent in the fact that you were starting a business and you were doing something that you really cared about and that it really drove you. Whereas I was in a software business that, I have a passion for software and for quality of software and process management stuff, but you have a passion for people. I'm very much an introvert, and when it comes to people, you're very much an extrovert, and that's probably why things work out so well in the marriage. But you enjoy being in front of people. You enjoy teaching. You enjoy getting to know people and understanding what their pain points are, and providing solutions to those pain points. So was I resentful? No, I wasn't resentful. I think I was more curious and curious, not being an odd word, but curious in that, where was this going? What is this going to turn into? And a little anxious to know from a financial perspective, are we doing the right thing with you from a career perspective, when your degrees were in software management, process management, and all that kind of stuff, and we knew the kind of money you could make in corporate. So I think it was more of an anxiousness than a resentfulness, because ever since we both were out of jobs and we were close to losing the new home, I've become very financially focused for the household and where that was going long term. So there was no resent. It was more of anxiousness and curiosity what it was turning into.
Okay. Annette wants to know, besides French fries, what's your favorite vegetable? I thought I'd lighten the moment for a minute. Yeah.
Well, it'd probably have to be tater tots. No.
I told her mashed potatoes.
No, I would have to say it's probably cucumbers or radishes.
Okay.
So, and I know Annette, so
there you go. Well, I kind of assumed that all potatoes, like, I don't even consider those vegetables, but for you, we can consider a French fry vegetable.
Anything that's fried is considered a vegetable, whether it's an Oreo or a Twinkie or whatever. Anything fried is a vegetable.
I think that is an interesting take. I've never asked you that question, if you've been resentful of the time. I know there were times where you've said to me, can you just turn it off and walk away and come in here and be with the family? Or can you put your phone down? But I've asked you the same thing, but when you get involved in something at work or something that's happening. So that's been, I think, back and forth on both sides.
But I think a lot of it, though, was more of us having to explain to the boys, Dad, why is Mom on the phone on the weekend? Doesn't she know it's Saturday? Why does she work on Saturdays?
Or at night.
Or at night, or and it's the same thing for me when I would come home sometimes and be on call. So I think it was more of having to explain the whys, not necessarily, I don't know.
A 9-to-5 kind of thing?
Yeah, it's never been a 9-to-5 kind of. You and I have never really worked 9-to-5 jobs. And this is definitely not a 9-to-5 job. Certainly not a 9-to-5 job when you're trying to get it off the ground.
So here's another question that was written in and asked: how does self-employment impact our relationship?
I don't know that it impacts our relationship
as much as
it does. There are different burdens each one of us carry. One of the burdens I'm sure you carry is you have a financial goal you want to get to. You have a growth goal you want to get to. I don't worry about those kind of things in my job because I work for a big software company. But the things that I worry about are things that come with the big software company, being benefits, health benefits, and things like that. Whereas, your entrepreneurial startup company, and it's really not startup anymore. It's
After
not fair
20
to call
years,
it.
we probably shouldn't call it a startup.
We shouldn't call it a startup, but it's a small business, and one of the things we don't do in your small business is cover benefits.
Right.
Obviously.
Well, legally I can if you cover me.
Yeah.
So there is that whole legal aspect.
So has that been something that has been a challenge? Yeah. Is it something that causes conflict between us? I don't think so. It becomes a bit of a, well, what do we do if I want to change jobs? What do we do for benefits and things like that? But
right.
It's always worked out, and I'm sure it'll continue to work out.
So as far as other impacts to our relationship, you being, what was that?
So I mentioned earlier.
No.
Okay.
Let's go back to this. Travel. You don't love it when I travel.
I am not a fan of when you travel.
Because you have to walk the dogs alone.
Well, no, that's not the only thing. You have to understand, and you don't have to understand. You do. But the people listening, your clients who are listening, have to understand. We have known each other and have been buddies, pals, best friends since 1984.
Yeah.
So when you're accustomed to having your best friend with you every night and is within 30-minute driving distance every day, and you're that way for, let's say, 15 years before you started some of the travel, when the first travel comes along, you're like, I got to sleep in this bed by myself. Or I've got to get myself up early in the morning. Oh, no, by the way, 2 boys at the same time. So that was a challenge and a change for me. But it was really no different than the challenge and the changes you went through when my job had me traveling on and off.
Right.
So I don't think...
I appreciate you seeing it that way.
Well, I don't see it as a problem. I guess if there's some resentfulness, okay, let's talk about that. I would love to get out of Atlanta every once in a while.
I take you on a business trip.
And you have taken me on some of your business trips, and they're a lot of fun if you like that sort of thing.
Oh, come on. I took you to the Grand Canyon.
You did take me to the Grand Canyon.
I took you to Las Vegas. I've taken you to Bahamas. I think you got a sweet deal.
Yeah, I think that's been a sweet deal. So I can consider it that way. So I think that's good. So that's a positive statement.
We're back around to that. I like it. Other ways that self-employment, I think, has impacted our relationship is with our boys. Let me dig in and tell you why, and then I'd love to hear your perspective on that. So, the boys would they pick on me a lot. I mean, I am the smallest one in the house. They're 6 foot tall, and I'm about 5'3" on a tall day. And they've always given me grief that my mom either makes money sewing or playing on Facebook. And they would see me in Facebook groups, and they would see me talking. And a lot of it was either teaching and creating PowerPoints or all the things that I was doing. And their joke is just, my mom plays on Facebook and makes money. And I remember when they were younger, and I did a podcast earlier in the summer on it, but when the kids would complain about they couldn't go to the pool because mom was working in the summer, or they didn't have this and they couldn't do that. You know how kids are so very all about themselves. Mm. And do you remember you and I sat down and we figured out what I would be making, assuming I had stayed in corporate? And we did that calculation. It was multiple millions. Do you remember? And we wrote it all down, and we sat down to the boys, and you presented it as the dad. And you said to them, I want to show you what your mother chose. She chose raising you, being home with you, allowing you to come home after school, and then paying for all of these things and giving up this amount of money in a corporate environment so that we could be here. We made choices for our lifestyle. Your mom and I together have made choices for our family, and this is what we think is important. And if you want to, get to the pool, you need to help your mom out. You need to help the family out. Your job is to do these things. Yeah. So you were so great. You never made it like it was just mom's, even at the beginning when it was truly like a side hustle, trying to make money at it. You never diminished it. And then as the business has grown and has been able to make the money and do the things that I teach, because I had to learn them the hard way, you have always stood up and explained to the boys, here's what mom's doing, and here's where you may not see it. Like yours, they could see what dad's money kind of did. And then you would be like, they would say, hey, dad, thanks. You would say, you need to thank your mom. You need to thank her. You still do that to these days because they don't know. We have joint accounts and you and I just dump all our money in there. But the boys would always look at it because dad worked corporate and thank you. And you stopped and twisted it and caught all that.
So there was one day when Harrison, who was our oldest, was, I don't know, he was probably 4 or 5 years old. Something came up and we had to figure out how to come up with, I don't know, it wasn't an insurmountable amount of money, but let's say it was a couple of $100. And Harrison said, well, that's okay, Daddy. We could just go out into the backyard and pick it off the tree. So, at the time they saw money just like leaves grow on the tree, is that we'll just go get what we need. And I think having the dual income from a steady state of corporate and then another income as a small business in the household, I think they have the opportunity to watch the way the different streams of income affect the way you make decisions in the household. But it also has an impact on the decisions you made as the business owner. I mean, I've always said, and I joked early on that I was your angel investor early on. And if the truth be told, you have probably been the household angel investor for a long time.
Oh, that's
a lot of the things that we do, a lot of the trips we take, a lot of the fun things that we do come from the income you bring in from the business, not from my corporate job. So I turn it around a little bit and yeah, my income's a steady state income, but yours can fluctuate. And when it does fluctuate, you are really the angel investor into the household because your income allows us to do some of the things that maybe we typically would not have done. So,
well, I just want to tell you, thank you for positioning it that way, because it coming from corporate and into more of a self-guided business, a solopreneurship, interiors, things that some see as fluffy or that they don't matter. Mm-hmm. As well as I do, like you were shocked the first time I started really telling you what I was charging for window treatment. So when you would tell me to mark them up, I was marking them up and starting to really understand the value of what I was doing. And I remember you being shocked at some of the cost. And I was shocked. We're shocked even when we did the calculations.
I was shocked at what people are willing to spend to put fabric over a window. I was blown away.
And it's amazing, isn't it?
You remember in our first house, there was a bay window in our first house.
Yes.
That had, the previous owners had custom window treatments made for that bay window. And we had a male dog at the time when we bought that house. And the little male dog would periodically go to that bay window and hike his leg on those custom window treatments.
Custom window treatments.
We didn't know how expensive they were. We had no idea what it cost to make those and to fabricate them and install them. And then, fast forward, 15 years or whatever the time frame was, you start seeing what it costs to fabricate these window treatments, to install the window treatments, to dress the window treatments. See, there's another industry.
I know, I
got that one too. To dress the window treatments. All those things take money. And I never realized that installers, that there was actually a market for people who install, I shouldn't say for people, for professionals who install window treatments. I had no idea. I'm the type of guy, I'm a handy kind of guy. Give me a ladder and a hammer, and I'll put the window treatments on the wall. You might not like what they look like, but I'll get them on the wall.
I did teach you how to install.
You did
properly.
But I never realized that there were, and I'm gonna call them professionals. And there are industries that do nothing, and I don't minimize it by saying nothing, but they don't focus on anything but the hardware to hang up window treatments. I was stunned by that. And then one of the recent shows that I went to with you, when I was walking
we were at the IWCE.
Yeah, when we were walking the exhibit floor or whatever, And I've seen all of these different companies with their wares, showing what they have and the different things and the different little takes on each one of them. And I thought to myself, this. Can you imagine this for a tool company to go and buy little gadgets? They're like, you got 50 companies here selling their widget, and every widget has a little nuance to it that makes theirs better than someone else's. And I was just taken aback a bit by all of these companies that have this stuff, and they're all in business to make money, just like I'm in business to make money, you're in business to make money, we're all in business to make money. But it just took me back a little bit at how much this industry covers. And I don't mean that facetiously. You got window coverings and you got bedding, you got all that stuff. But I never realized.
Then you got the whole interior design piece of it.
I never realized how big the interior design side of business really is. And it's got
huge.
to be in the multi-billions of dollars. I'm sure it is.
Yeah. But you know what? Even without all of that deep understanding, right? You still supported what I did as important. You understood the importance of what it does in our home. I mean, you know what it feels like when a room in our home is designed and decorated and done well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you and I both just got finished helping our son get his house ready for him to move in. We know the difference that color makes in a room. We know how it feels for him to have updated light fixtures and appliances and what that feels like in a home. And so you were great at supporting me as I was supporting others to do that, and then to help them build their businesses. So like when I turned from helping the homeowner and started helping all the business owners, you saw that. One of the things that, one of the questions that was asked was, what is it like to be married to and support your spouse as a small business owner? We've kind of touched on that, but can you think of anything else? Like, what's it like to support a small business owner?
It can be a challenge. There's always, so, I've mentioned I'm in software. In big software, you can have something happen, and it might be let's say it's a $50,000 write-off or whatever the case may be. Small business owners have a tough time, or can conceivably have a hard time digesting a $50,000 loss. I'd have to believe that any company that's small, whatever we define small as, would have a tough time digesting, let's say, a $50,000 loss. So sometimes, you would say to me, hey, it's going to cost me this to do X, Y, or Z. What do you think? And what have I always said about how to make money?
You got to invest money to make money.
You have to,
but it's got to invest the right money at the right time.
You got to spend money to make money, or you got to invest money to make money, and that's kind of been a saying that I've had for a long, long time. I don't know where I got it from, but you have to spend money to make money. So I think being the spender in our house.
That was a question. Are you the spender or the saver?
So preview, I'm the spender. So being the spender in the house, I'm always the one when you would say, do you think I should spend this money to do this? Generally speaking, I always say, yeah, you should spend that money. Now, maybe 6 months later, I might come back and ask you, did you get a return on the money you spent? Most times the answer is yes. Once in a blue moon, there might be a no.
Yeah.
But usually it's a yes.
So you are definitely the spender. I'm the saver. I would say we've gotten more now to where we meet in the middle over the years, but we also then, even when we spend with a plan.
Yep.
So we don't spend without a plan. We both have done Dave Ramsey. We've taught it in our church. Of course, I'm Profit First. And so we follow all of the accounts. We've got our money in multiple places, and we do look to try to be careful with that. But what do you think the boys have learned from watching me be in business and watching you support me? Because they, as young men, they watch you and they've seen. And of course, they think I play on Facebook.
Well, yeah, you play on Facebook all day. So the one thing that we tried to teach the boys from the very get-go is, as men, and this is not a sexist statement, so I don't want Michelle getting any emails from this, okay? As men, your job, as the Bible teaches us, is you are the provider of the household. So it is your job to work and provide for your family. So I think what we've done is done a greater than average job at teaching our boys what it's like to work. Um, we're not a lazy family. We've never been a lazy family. Even when we both had full-time jobs, we were both heavily involved in the Cub Scoutings and the Boy Scoutings and the neighborhood, the community HOAs and all that kind of stuff. So we've always been, I don't want to say workaholics, but we've always been a couple that worked a lot. And I think our boys have picked up on the fact that when our feet hit the floor in the morning, we're working on something. Now, whether it's just working out something in our head or we're heads down focused on spreadsheets and financials, or we're outside digging a trench for a water line, or whatever the case may be, our boys have been raised in a household where they've been taught the value of work and they've been taught the value of hard work. So I think they've been able to see that our philosophy has been, I suppose, you give your best regardless of what you're doing. Even if you don't like it, you give your best 100% of the time. And I think we have started to see the fruits of that in both the boys, uh, where some of the decisions they've made, both in college, in their summer jobs, now Harrison in his full-time job after college, we're seeing the fruits of that. And I think part of that is watching you start a business and all of the pains that are associated with starting a business and growing that business. They've seen the struggles and the aggravation on my part, I think, of watching you work 12, 14, 16, 18 hours a day at times. They've seen me come home frustrated because of big software companies doing something a certain way and I don't like it. So I think they've seen that it takes a different type of mentality to be successful. And a part of that mentality is you have to understand that a man's role, again, not a sexist remark, just stating it as I see it, a man's role in the household is to provide for his family. And I think we have tried to model that both from my career and your career, whether it was in corporate or starting things out as a hobby and then investing into some other things, into what you're doing today in the financial consulting side of things. I think they see that we are committed to what we do, whether it's 100% of what we like every day, or if it's pure drudgery at times. They see that it is worth the effort if it's done with 100% of your effort and your whole heart when doing it.
You know, the other thing is, I think that we've taught them that in this day and age, it very much takes
two incomes
now. Not to say that it's not possible on one, right, because it is in some cases, but in many cases it takes two. Mm-hmm. And what we've also showed them is, because there were plenty of years where we didn't need two incomes, your income was sufficient. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to work and I wanted to do things. And so I love that they've been able to see, because I mean, I think most people know I'm a pretty strong woman. Like, I am not
I don't know what
you don't know what I'm talking about? No. I'm not a weepy willow kind of gal, and I'm going to say what I need to say when I need to say it. I'm going to try to be kind. I would say 85% of the time, maybe 80.
That's
I can stretching it. Okay. I do try to be kind, but I'm a very
60-40.
60-40. I'm a very strong woman. And so they've also seen a very strong woman as their mom, who has worked, who has not worked, who's made money, who's run a business. And my goal for them was, yes, I want them to be providers, but I also want them to know that whoever they marry may very well be an equal provider, if not more of a provider. So, like, there's going to be times that they.
So you remember, we got it when we started our careers right out of college. Our first jobs, you started a week before I did in your job, and you were making about $1,500 to $2,500 a year more than me. And as a guy, that hit your ego a little bit. And that went on for, I don't know, a couple of years. I distinctly remember the day I came home from getting a raise saying, yes, I've done it. I make more money than my wife now. But I have
now
no,
you don't care.
I don't care.
Now you're like, bring home all you want,
if
baby.
if you make 10 times what I do, I'm like, hey, that's just gravy. I don't care. I look at you as my retirement plan. So,
Is that right? No, but I do think that the boys have learned about following your passion, but that doesn't mean, like you said, that it's all easy, that there are times where it's very, very difficult.
Work is called work for a reason. If it were all the time fun, it would be called pleasure. It's called work. And sometimes work requires you to get sweaty. Sometimes work causes you to have to beat your head against the wall. Regardless of what how work is defined, work is work, and work takes effort. And to be successful at work, you got to give your whole heart, and you got to be willing to, as soon as your feet hit the floor, you got to be willing to work.
So, how much business advice do you give me without being asked? That was a question. It says, how much business advice does Joel give you? And then their question is, how do I respond to that advice? So I'm going to let you answer first. How much business advice do you give me without being asked? Why don't we start in the early days? Because it's different now.
That's a hard question. I think in the early days, it was more of, and a lot of it was related to what you were charging. I wanted you to charge for everything. I mean, if you went and did a consultation and you were gone from the house for an hour, I felt like you should charge for that hour. Now, longer term, you started, building that into your cost and things. But I think
you were right. I'm just going to tell you that.
I know I was right.
You know you're right.
I'm right on most things.
But one of the reasons I did, now that's a whole different podcast, big boy. One of the reasons I didn't do it, and I think many on the podcast who are listening to the podcast maybe don't do it either, was out of fear. I was learning. I was trying to get kind of my feet wet with what I was doing. I was fearful they would say, no, I couldn't come over. Not everybody around us was charging consult. I was charging consulting fees before anybody else around us practically was doing it. And I was the unicorn.
One of my things was, what's the worst thing they're going to do is say no.
Right.
I mean, it's not like they're going to run you out of their house, lighting you on fire as you're tossed out the front door. The worst thing,
my favorite books.
Yeah, the worst they're going to say is no. Or the worst they're going to do is push back. And I think one of the things that I guess some advice I may have given, you'd have to tell me if I gave it, I don't remember, was if they push back and say, well, can you do it for this? You look at them and say, no, I can't. This is my cost. This is my price. This is what it's going to take to do this. If you choose to accept my bid or whatever, then we can move forward. If you don't choose to accept my bid, I'm sure there's someone else out there who can do the work for you.
Right. You did. The other thing you always told me was every time you would look at one of my invoices, you would say, you need to add $100. Or you would say, how much time is that going to take you? How much time is that going to take you? What is your profit on that? What is the return on that investment? You asked me that a lot. And so now let's talk about how I responded to it. I'm going to say,
so there was some go-aways.
There were some go-aways. Okay, in all fairness, there were times where I asked you specific questions that when you answered me, sometimes I responded really well and said, thank you, that sounds great, that's what I was looking for, what do you think? Sometimes I would respond back and say, I don't think that will work. I don't think you understand the industry. And in all fairness, you didn't. Even now, you're getting the bigger glimpse of it. But you were coming at it with a very corporate mindset, and home-to-home sales and primarily household sales, sitting in someone's home, it's a very different transaction. And so sometimes I would push back and say, I don't think you understand. That might work in software. I remember being there. I remember the corporate. But I also know that sometimes you pushed me on the finances in the beginning, and it irritated me because you would be like, are you making any money? It's like when you probably knew I was losing money and I hadn't quite looked at it yet because I didn't want to look at it because it wasn't going to tell me a story I wanted to hear. Mm-hmm. And you kept saying, what is your profit on that? What is your profit on that? And I don't know if you remember, But the day I figured out all my profits and you pushed back and said, how much profit is that? I said, would you like gross or net, before or after taxes, before I put money in the IRA or after? Like, exactly where do you want profits? And you said, never mind. I think you got it.
I think you got it.
I think you got it. And that was the end of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the other thing. One of the questions that came with that was, how involved are you in my business? So I would say one of the things that we also shifted, and I think I may have mentioned this on the podcast before, because we've had the time where you maybe offered unsolicited advice, and it was usually because you thought I was being taken advantage of and you wanted to protect me, either on pricing or the client was asking for too much or something that you thought I needed protecting. That's when you usually speak up. Otherwise, you just are a sounding board.
Well, when I know about it, when you
right.
make me aware of it, and when you tell me about things, then yeah.
Right. You're also always willing to, and my company is 100% owned by me. I'm the 100% ownership. It's a full woman-owned business. But I would also, now what I've done is I share with you, I realize that when you would offer me, let's say guidance, advice, assistance, whatever word we want to fill in, and it wasn't solicited, I didn't receive it as well sometimes. And so what I started doing is telling you, here are the goals that I have, and then sending you my P&L and sending you my balance sheet and talking to you about my company. Like, I don't share independent client information with you, but I share, here's my company goals, here's my marketing efforts, and here are my financials. And then I say, look at them and ask me questions.
Yeah.
And that you have been really great at. And I would say, don't you think I received that well because I'm asking you to advise?
Yeah, there have been times when so knowing what your growth goals are, when you tell me what those are, and you plan those at the beginning of the year, knowing what those are and what your financial goals are every year, and you send me quarterly P&L and balance sheet information on the company, and I look at it, and there are times, and I'd say, well, what is this line here? Why are you spending money here? What benefit is this doing you? And so there have been a couple of situations like that where either I didn't understand what it was where the money was going, or something we may have talked about and I just didn't realize it. But there are also other times when you would say, well, I tried this and it didn't work or something, or I don't know. There's been a couple of situations like that, but nothing that stands out. So yeah, you do send me unsolicited P&Ls every quarter. You send me the balance sheet every quarter, and I don't ask for them. I just
because I asked you. I thought, my gosh, you're over here running, a whole division of a software company. Why would I not ask you to look at what I've got? But it puts me in a frame of mind to be open to what you want to share with me versus having you just step in and tell me. Because honestly, as a woman, and maybe just as my own ego and pride and hard-headedness, if you just start looking at what I'm doing and telling me what I'm doing wrong or what I could do better, I take it as an insult. And so when I ask you to speak into it and you do, I take it as help and assistance and caring.
Right.
And so I had to change my mindset that you're here to help me, not to hurt me. So I need to be willing to ask you. Now, it doesn't mean I have to take your advice.
No, and sometimes you don't.
And sometimes I don't. But I can ask you and get your input and maybe talk it through with you. And then we both understand what I'm doing.
Yeah, I would say that probably, I don't know, 9 times out of 10, if you ask for my input, you probably act on that input and do something with it. There's always I get a loose screw sometimes, and there's always that craziness that comes out, and I'm like, well, why don't you do this? And you just have to stop me and say, no, that's silliness. We're not going to do that. So there's occasions that happen. You're smart enough to know the difference between the two, though.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Again, not my question.
Oh boy.
Right. I think this was Amy's, and a couple other people sent. I had like 3 people ask the same question. Okay. What is it like to live with a powerful woman?
I learned how to say yes, ma'am, a lot. And this is not going to sound. I don't see you as.
You were going to say you don't see me as powerful, weren't you?
Yeah, I was actually. I was going to say I don't see you as powerful. I still see you as my best friend. I still see you as my high school sweetheart. I still see you as my confidant in crime. I still see you as the person who makes me laugh. I still see you as the person who raised our boys, and I still see you as probably the steady state in our entire family. So does that define you as a powerful woman? If that's the case, then yeah, I think that's great.
You did give me Wonder Woman for my 50th birthday.
I did give you Wonder Woman for your 50th birthday.
I've got a Wonder Woman Barbie doll over there.
So how is it to live with a powerful woman?
Here's the question. It says, does it present struggles in our marriage? That's just hard-headedness.
I'm not answering that question because I know better. I've learned living with a powerful woman. I know what not to answer, and when I'm forced to answer the question, I know how to answer it.
On the podcast.
And I'm sorry, dear. Please forgive me. Thank you. May I have another?
You're crazy.
So I'm not answering that question. Sorry, Amy.
I will say that what I love is that I don't know that I see myself as a powerful woman. I see myself as a strong-minded woman and strong-willed woman for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you're man enough that I get to still be a strong-willed and strong opinion, because you are too. You're the introvert. Like, people might think that you're not because you're the introvert, but you have very strong opinions. Yeah. And you share them with me and I share mine with you, and we may battle it out, but it's always usually worked out within the next few minutes. Yeah. And half the time, I would say more than half the time, I would say 99% of the time, we are agreeing. Right, you're wrong.
Is that what you were going to say? I think that's what you were going to say.
You think so? I was going to say, I think we kind of come up with the same answers. We just have different ways of presenting it to each other.
So,
would you think that's fair?
Absolutely. So, I don't even know how your brain works.
Strategic.
You're a very strategic.
I can tell you what it is.
Please do.
Tell you. Yeah. Let me help you out here.
Tell me how your brain works, would you?
We've talked about this. I think out 5 or 10 steps and work my way back. You deal with what is in front of you right now. And then you figure out if it all falls apart, I'll deal with the next thing in a few minutes. I've already thought it all the way out to its logical conclusion. What is the guy in, is it Dr. Strange? So maybe I'm strange. Is he the one that thinks about there was one out of how many billion ways this could work out in the Avengers?
Something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've already worked out every possible way for it to work. Yeah. And I'm telling you, we need to do this first. And you're going, well, we're not at that step yet.
I'm more of a tactical thinker.
You're tactical.
I'm tactical. You're strategic. And you're a math brain. I'm not a math brain. I'm a hands-on thinker. If you
learner,
want me to, I learn with my hands on it. You can read about it. You can listen, and you get it. I have to experience it. So you're very strategic, and I'm very tactical.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good description. So how and when did you know that coaching was what I was supposed to be doing? Because in all, again, transparency, my business has shifted. It started off with window treatments, moving along to doing some of the interiors, and then buying and selling into the management company at the Custom Home Furnishings Academy, putting out a magazine every other month for almost 4 years, teaching and educating. And then I had my big health scare where I had to sell one business and close another down because of the health issues, and started coaching back in 2013. I don't know if you remember this, but I remember there was a company after I'd started coaching. Do you remember? It was right around New Year's Eve. And they called and offered me a job making high 6 figures with ownership of the company. And they wanted me to come in and pretty much coach their entire internal team. But they were going to require me to stop my business.
Stop your business. And your stance was, I don't think I want to do this for someone else, regardless of what you're going to pay me. I don't want to do this for someone else and have to walk away from it and have zero ownership of what you were producing.
It was for a company it was within the interiors industry, but it wasn't one that I was like, woohoo, let's write home to mom about that.
Yeah. I think it was more of, you wanted, if you were going to put in that level of effort and that level of
doing
work,
it for myself.
You were doing it for you. You were doing it for your benefit long term and not someone else's benefit long term. And I think that's when I knew
Do you remember the emails that came in though? Like, I don't know if
yeah.
do you remember that? So we were praying about, should I quit my own company and go to work for this other company that was creating this awesome offer. That was right before the kids were getting ready to go to college. We were talking about how that was going to solve all the college issues. The money, it was going to be like so nice. It was really just going to be so nice if we only looked at the financials.
If we only looked
at the financials. And I remember I kept saying to you, my heart's not settled, my heart's not settled. And it was New Year's Eve, and we were doing our family New Year's Eve tradition where we had fondue around the table, and we all set our family goals for the next year. And my email started dinging, and I opened up. It was right before we sat down for dinner, and I started showing you the emails where everybody that I was working with at the time, out of the blue, started emailing
you,
me,
thanking you for all the stuff what you were doing in their businesses.
Yeah,
they were praising your on stage presence. They were just giving rave reviews about unsolicited, completely out of left. Completely out of left field.
I called you into the office. I said, honey, look at my text, look at my email. They're blowing up. Well, and I had not told any. The only person that I had told outside of me and you was Janelle, because she was my accountability partner. And I'd told her. I had not told any other person. And you sat down and you read all of those emails, and you read the emails of the women who wrote in and said, here's what coaching with you has done in my life and my business. And here's what's happened with my family. And do you remember you turned around and looked at me and you said, this is what you're supposed to be doing?
I think I said, I think you should not consider that offer anymore. This is what you're supposed to be doing.
And the money will come.
And the money it'll happen. I mean, it'll happen. I think it's happened.
Yeah.
Hasn't it happened?
Yeah, it's been good. And even, even if it didn't, one of the things we talk about on this podcast is profitability is about more than the money. It's about the family. I mean, we chose to give up the corporate money so that I could be home and help raise the family. We chose to hold my business back over years to control it so that I could still raise the family. We agreed, that what we were going to do with it. And then and I don't mean this again in a better, you get out of the way and just let me do my thing.
Yeah. So for the longest time,
you never got in the way.
Yeah. For the longest time, I was in the way. I think I was in the way because I was the man. I was the provider. My career had to come first. You raised the kids, take care of the family. And then once the boys got to a certain age, and I don't know what the certain age was, I think I realized I need to get out of your way because you were busting the doors down to get out of this house and talk to people about what was in your head and what you knew and how you could help. And I think I just had to realize, I think I even told my mom and dad this one time, I had to get out of her way so that she could live the career that she was supposed to be in. And this is it, without a shadow of a doubt. It took a few years to, I think for both of us to realize it. But I think after we both realized it, I try to stay out of your way because you generally will run over me if I don't. So.
I never thought of it as you being in my way. It's interesting. I always just thought this was what we had agreed to for our family, and it made the most sense for our family. And I chose because I could have voiced a different opinion, and I didn't.
I know.
I could have voiced the opinion that I wanted to go out and do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, but for me,
because she's a strong woman.
Because I'm a strong woman, smarty bitches. But for me, it was I wanted a happy family. I wanted peace at home. I wanted comfort, and I could have done those things. But at that time, working at that level that I needed to work would have caused more stress, and so it was worth it to me not to. But as the kids grew, my business grew, and I was able to do more and more and more and more until now. We're empty nesters for the most part. And, outside of making sure I don't travel too much so that my health takes the hit, I pretty much, but I've got good days now. I work, pretty much, I still probably work about a 10-hour day, but that's by choice.
It's not because some ogre CEO is looking over your shoulder going, are you going home early today again? Or are you going to work another 10 hours or whatever? you know, you are the ogre CEO.
I am the ogre
guess.
CEO. So is there anything else you can think of? Any question you want to ask me before we wrap up?
You know, I've always wondered why you, no, I don't know how to ask this question. How long it took you to realize, or what did it take for you to be comfortable coming to me and saying, this is what I want to do as a career? How long did you
Think about it?
think about it? Did you struggle with it? Did you how long did you contemplate saying, hey, I want to do this, knowing that it was going to take a few years to get it off the ground, and you know?
So the first company, when I say first company, the first iteration of Scarlet Thread, all of these are under my Scarlet Thread LLC umbrella, but the first iteration in 2000, I didn't think about it that much. You and I had been talking about me doing custom window treatments. We'd been talking about me doing interiors. I'd gone to Oglethorpe University at night when I worked at Dun & Bradstreet. I had done some of the design classes, and you know, there were not any window treatment classes at the time, but I had done what I could around the area. I'd always loved design. I did cake decorating. Remember, I did all that.
That was great.
It was yummy. I did all kinds of.
I got to be the taste tester for those. That was wonderful.
All the design stuff. I just kind of moved into it. So I don't ever remember stopping and thinking, I think I'll make a career out of that. I think it just kind of organically happened. I remember coming to you when I wanted to invest in CHF Academy. As a matter of fact, it was your idea, not mine. And you said to me,
you and Janelle were talking on the phone, and
I made a comment about here's an option, here's an opportunity.
Here's an option, and I said, well, what does that cost?
And I told you.
And a number was put on the table, and I said, well, let's do that.
Well, let's do it. Do you want to go do it? And I was like, yeah, I want to go do it. So I never even asked you that one.
Yeah.
That one I probably thought about, but I don't know that I would have asked you because of the investment. You turned around and said, hey, I think you should do that.
So we took money out of one of our retirement funds
to do that.
To do that.
But that one was you offering me. Okay.
Yeah.
The next one, the next iteration of my company, I would say, was the coaching. Mm-hmm. And that one was after I had been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Mm-hmm. I had had bypass surgery on my arm. Mm-hmm. I had had nerve damage, and I couldn't go back to business the way it was. Mm-hmm. And we had sold CHF Academy, mm-hmm. and I wasn't even sure I could go back to workroom because my right arm, my dominant arm, I couldn't use it. And I was crying and praying and trying to figure out, now what am I going to do with my life? If the things that, number one, I've been out of software for too long at that point. Number two, I can't really fabricate at the level that I would want or need to fabricate at because my arm won't work. What am I going to do? And that was when Annette and others were reaching out and asking me questions and saying, you've taught us all these classes. Can you coach us? Mm-hmm. And I said then, hey, I think I want to go back and get my coaching license or my coaching certificate. And I went back and said, why don't I just take some classes in that? And then I just told you, hey, here's what I think I'm going to do. And I remember thinking that December of 2012, I don't know if I told you this, I may have. I remember sitting in the driveway crying that one day. It was right before my birthday at the beginning of December. And I remember telling Rhonda, a friend of mine, Rhonda, like, nobody's going to pay me. I'm over here taking all these classes to be a great coach. Nobody's going to pay me for anything. And we went out to eat at Ichiban. And there was a woman, which is one of those Japanese steakhouses. And there was a woman and her husband and two little boys. Do you remember this? And you and I were sitting at the table with our two boys, Harrison and Brantley. Mm-hmm. And we were just carrying on this conversation. I was sitting next to the mom. And we were just chatting. And her little boys were probably about 3 and 5. And she leaned around me and looked over at you and said, your wife should write a book because people would pay her for what she knows. Mm-hmm. And I started crying at the table, like tears. And I thought to myself, I had just been saying, God, nobody's going to pay me for anything I know. And this woman who has no clue who I am, never met her again in my life, leans around me and says to you, your wife should go do this. That was when I thought, well, okay, I guess we're moving on and yeah. We're going to start coaching. Yeah. And I did the research and then was able to meet people and move it forward. So I don't know that I stewed about it. I think that whole best friend thing came into play. I've always kind of told you, here's what's on my heart and here's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah, you have. And I think for the most part, maybe with the exception of one or, well, I don't even know. I think for the most part, I've been supportive of what you've wanted to do. I tried to, if you've needed help in any way, shape, form, and you've asked, I've tried to help. But you have a talent that I think you get the teaching side of things from your mother, who taught school for 30 years. And so you get that from your mother. You have the ability to be in front of people and you connect with people. I don't know how you do it. I mean, I can do presentations and I can connect with some people, but you have the ability to get on stage and connect with people who you don't know. I don't know. Maybe you envision all of them with nothing but their underwear on. That's the way
I don't use that
it.
tactic anymore.
Okay. So you just have the ability to present information in an engaging way that most people look at as very dry and mundane. I mean, financials are, for a dyslexic person, financials are, I don't want to see them, I don't want to deal with them. And you're able to make it, I don't know, you bring it to life. You have a way of making it personal. You have a way of connecting with each one of the people that you're talking to. And the only reason I can say this is because I've read a lot of the reviews that you get from the varying seminars and classes and stuff like that you've done. And having sat in seminars and classes and stuff and given reviews on varying topics, I can tell you, if the presenter doesn't know their material and can't engage with their audience, you're going to get a poor review. You don't get poor reviews at all. I don't think I've ever read anything. If your range is 1 to 5, the worst you've ever got is a 4.8 or something like that. You've never gotten anything below just great. And
I love what I do.
You do love what you do, and it's obvious. It comes out when you're talking to your clients. It comes out when you're on stage. It comes out. It's obvious to me when I meet your clients, when I get to go to some of the shows and things.
Aren't they awesome? I've got the best ones.
They entertain me with the stories of how you have helped them, and so it's there's a lot of pride there that I get to watch you do this on the sidelines. And it's really enjoyable to see other people benefit from what you bring to the table and how you like to help them.
Well, thank you. We need to work on this whole power thing. I need to be a more powerful woman at home.
Yeah, well, okay.
Thank you for coming on. I know you were nervous. You did a really good job.
I'm not a public speaker by any means. I think I may have said this at the beginning of the podcast. My voice is going to come across sounding really weird recorded. I hope it doesn't, but I think it will. I'm just a country boy that grew up and met his best friend in high school. I'm watching you grow and just love what you do. And I love you for doing it.
Well, thank you. I love you. And thank you for coming on the podcast. And thank you for being part of Profit is a Choice. And now all my listeners will know that second to French fries, you like cucumbers and radishes.
And tater tots.
And tater tots. Yeah. Thanks, honey.
Sure.
Thanks to my sweet hubby for joining us today. He prefers to stay in the background, and so I am super thankful that he was willing to answer these questions. My hope is that you have really wild, awesome support like I do, because I know that support has allowed and fueled me to chase my dreams of entrepreneurship. If you have a spouse or a partner, ask them some of these questions. Believe it or not, some of these were the first time we've actually talked about these things, and so I heard the answers right along with you. For those of you that don't have an awesome support system or who need more support than what you currently have, please let my team and I assist you. It's what we do best. And Joel was telling the truth when he made the comment about this excites me and this it just inspires me to help and inspire you. So let me help you. The Designers Inner Circle was created to offer this support, and you can find out all the details about that at scarletthreadconsulting.com. Don't try to be your own motivator. Let us help you, because everything we do is a choice, and profit doesn't happen by accident.